Hello and welcome to All 32. My name is Arabia, and here we talk all things football. Today I am joined by my co host, Coach George Hegamin. George, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing fantastic. So, since this is the inaugural show, I want to give the audience a sneak peek, just a little tidbit about you. Do you want to tell them about your time in the NFL, NFLPA, IMG? Just give them a little bio about you.
Yeah, really cool. I appreciate that, Arabia. One of the better things that I've always appreciated about my journey is I've had the opportunity to touch a lot of athletes on a lot of different levels from my time playing with the Dallas Cowboys. I got drafted there as a third round draft pick with the Cowboys way back in the 1994 year. I had the fortune of playing there 4 years, winning the Super Bowl with the Cowboys. And then, we'll talk about it a little bit more tonight. Had the opportunity to go play for the Eagles for a year and then finishing my career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers under Coach Dungy. So I had a 7-year career, and after that, transitioned into training, mentoring players. The rest of my career, I've been doing that for about 35 years now. So that kind of ages me and dates me a little bit, but it's been excellent because as we get into talking about the games and things like that, it's hard for me to choose which team I like most because I got players on both teams. But had the opportunity to transition into IMG Academy. Went there as an offensive line coach, made my way up to the head coach for the post-grad team, then became the director of the whole football program for about 3 years. Before that, I was at the NFL Players Association for 5 years. So I've been around Arabia. I've done quite a bit. I've been fortunate. I've been blessed, and now I'm here with you. So what more can I say?
And I'm so happy to have you. Thank you so much for being on All 32. So basically what I heard is you're the perfect person to talk about this Eagles-Cowboys game because you play for both teams.
That's true. I know a little bit about both. So let's go.
Okay, so 16 games week one. Last night was the first one. Of those 16 games, half of them are division games. So these two division rivals really went at it. The final score was 24-20. Let's get into our first segment, Trench Talk with Coach George. Okay, so first game without two key pieces to both of these teams' defensive lines, but for very different reasons. For the Cowboys, Micah Parsons, of course, traded to the Green Bay Packers for 2 first-round picks and a defensive tackle. But for the Eagles, they lost Jalen Carter early on in the game before he even played a snap for spitting at
Yeah,
Dak Prescott. Now, let's
yeah.
back up into the whole story. Dak spit at Jalen Carter first, not on, but at Jalen Carter first. And then there was a retaliation of Jalen Carter spitting on Dak Prescott. Coach, give me your thoughts. What is this? What's your reaction to this?
Yeah, so when you start thinking about matchups, one of the better things that you always pay attention to is what's happening up front. And me understanding that the Cowboys have a retooled offensive line. As a matter of fact, they got 3 different Tylers, on the line right now. And I thought that was really interesting. But my thought was, how are the new revamped Cowboys going to deal with a Philadelphia Eagles front that's formidable, highly formidable, Jalen Carter being one of those players? So watching the game like everybody else and sees that he gets ejected for spitting on Dak, like that's something you just can't do. But I will tell you this, it says a lot about what the Eagles are as a team as a whole because it didn't allow it to affect the outcome of the game. Now, I will say this, when you lose a Jalen Carter, you lose some things that you can do up front that the Cowboys would have had struggles with. But I'm very encouraged about what I saw with Dallas and their young retooled offensive line because this is their first game, but you can see where they're starting to gel. I even saw Tyler Booker be one of the guys who actually signals, when the play is ready. So that says a lot about what they think about him. We already know what they think about Tyler Guyton. We already know what they think about Tyler Smith. And then the 2 tackles, still did a really good job tonight as well. But the thing about it is, here's the biggest thing about games like this, especially when they're divisional games. You're going to see these players at least twice a year. So with that, you always want to get off to a very good start and prove that you can handle whatever you're seeing offensively or defensively. And for most of the game, it was pretty much back and forth. The Dallas Cowboys, in my opinion, I thought they got off to a really good start, with the 3 Tylers and still the way that they were handling the Eagles front. They were passing off games. They were doing a really good job running the football. So you could see them coming together. But without a Jalen Carter, without a great player like that, you no longer have to worry about that one guy on that side of the ball that can be a disruptor. The Eagles already knew going into it, they didn't have to worry about Micah Parsons. However, what they didn't understand was that they are very deep at defensive end, and you can start to see some of those young guys come on, and that's going to be something we're going to have to pay more attention to going down the stretch.
Yeah, completely agree. I was going to ask you what this Micah-less defensive line means for the Cowboys offensive line, or I'm sorry, for the Eagles offensive line, and just figuring out how now, 8 days after he was traded, what that means for the game plan as far as the Eagles offensive line.
Well, here's the deal. Here's the deal, Arabia. Anytime you got a player of his caliber that's not going to be on the field, in game planning, you no longer have to say, we need to always know where this guy is, right? Without Micah Parsons, now they're just thinking about, you know what? Let's just run our normal protections. Let's run our normal blocking schemes. He's not on the field. We are going to play each man for each man. But I do want to point this out. Kenny Clark is probably, and I always thought about Kenny Clark being one of the better interior guys up front. And he is still one of the better guys up front. As he gets to know the Cowboy system, he's going to be one of those guys in the middle that they've been missing for a very long time. But here's the deal. To answer your question, going back to your question, without a Micah Parsons, all you're doing now is just doing what you normally do because you no longer have that disruptor on that side of the ball. And when Jalen Carter went out, the Cowboys didn't have to worry about that either.
Absolutely. And I would say the Eagles have one of the best, if not the best, tackle duo in the NFL with Jordan Mailata and Lane
Sure.
Johnson. So that's just an incredible unit right there. And of course, in the interior, they're solid. But I would say, speaking of Tyler Booker, Jalen Carter being out, kind of let Tyler Booker off the hook in a way because he didn't have to deal with a game disruptor like Jalen Carter, which brings us to our next segment, Rookie Watch. Tyler Booker took over for Zach Martin, who was drafted by the Cowboys in 2014. He announced his retirement earlier in March. Coach, what does this mean for the Cowboys? What expectations are there for this rookie taking over for Zach Martin? And how do you think he performed last night?
So first of all, let me say this. I have a bias in this, so I'm going to put that out there to begin with. I've been knowing and mentoring Tyler Booker since he was in the 8th grade. And since he was in the 8th grade, he started out as a defensive player. But here's the one thing that people need to understand about him. His mentality has always been that he was going to end up exactly where he is right now, being in the NFL. However, he always thought he was going to be on the defensive side of the ball. Why does that matter? His mentality is of a defensive player. He is always in attack. So when Tyler Booker and I got together at IMG Academy while I was there, he came in very aggressive. He was playing defense. We had no offensive lineman. I go to our head coach at the time, Kevin Wright, and I said, listen, we've got 2 first-round draft picks playing out of position. And he said, well, who are they? And I told him, I said, one of them is J.C. Latham, who's now a first-round draft pick for the Tennessee Titans, and the other one was Tyler Booker, who's first-round draft pick for the Dallas Cowboys this year. He has excelled in ways in a very short period of time, mainly because of his mentality, his work ethic, and his talent. So I knew that going into a game like this, he was going to be prepared for it, which I felt like he was. Now, here's the deal. It's Thursday night football. You're playing against the Philadelphia Eagles. You're going into it thinking you're going to have to play one of the most formidable inside dudes who is a real dude. But me knowing him, having talked to him leading up to this game, he was prepared. Now, we can say all we want about it being a relief that Jalen wasn't there, but here's what I know about Book. Book would have been prepared for him. He played well tonight. It was a start. It wasn't a Pro Bowl start, but here's what I know the Cowboys know. They got a guy inside that they're going to be able to count on for years to come.
Yeah, I agree. I think he played really well, but I would say filling Zach Martin's shoes kind of felt like a tall order, except for last year. If you look at Zach Martin's career, he made the Pro Bowl every single year except the last year that he played. He either made first team All Pro or second team All Pro his entire career, except for the last year that he played. And you ask yourself, well, what happened that last year? He still performed well. He allowed 5 sacks. He allowed 1 hit a few 24 pressures. But with his retirement, it does feel like a career-long Cowboy. And then Tyler Booker comes in for Zach Martin. But he played really, really well, I would say, for his first game. And it's good to know that he was prepared. I told you were the perfect person for this. Of course you talked to him. And of course you know him as Book.
Yeah, of course, that's Team Book, man. That's Team Book. But listen, here's the thing you got to also understand too is when they did mention T Book's name, it was all positive. It was all positive. As an offensive lineman, you never want your name mentioned on TV. If that happens, that means you did something wrong. Now, there were a couple times I could see he was a little late on some switches, but that's something that's going to come with more preparation, more time, and more experience. But other than that, I mean, he really held his own, so that's an upside for the Cowboys.
Coming into this game, I would have said that these two teams have totally different running back rooms. But if you look at the numbers, they were kind of even. So if you look at the Cowboys' total rushing yards, 119 total rushing yards tonight. For the Eagles, it's 158. Neither team had a passing touchdown. So in that regard, all it's completely rushing tonight, and the score felt like it reflected the game. I felt like it was a very close game. You know how sometimes the score doesn't really reflect the momentum
Sure.
of the game. And speaking of momentum, there was a lightning delay, there was a weather delay. So
Yep.
can you just talk a little bit about momentum? Because before the weather delay, it seems like both teams were rolling. Both teams had been scoring on those drives for the most part. And then when they
Right.
came back, it just was a lot slower. So what do you think that rain delay, that lightning delay did for both teams?
Oh, it has a huge effect on it. One of the toughest things in football, and anyone that's played the sport at any level, high school, college, or pro, will tell you, it's very difficult to get yourself warmed up and ready for a game. So anytime that you have an extended delay, that means you have to start your entire process all over again. They go in at halftime, and like you said, they scored just about on every drive, but then you come out in the second half. Now all of a sudden you got the defenses pressuring a little bit more. You got the offenses not necessarily being able to move the ball because of that. So it takes a little bit more time to get you back in the groove, and that's what you saw.
Yeah, and it also seems like this happened at a pretty inopportune moment for the Eagles, although they ended up winning the game because it was just after a fumble recovery
Sure.
by Quinyon Mitchell. And you would hope that in that situation, you can continue to get that momentum. You're at home. You know that Philly crowd is serious and use that for the next offensive play and what was a very close game. So, what does this Cowboys offensive line mean to Dak Prescott? Not just in terms of pass protection, but as far as creating opportunities for the run so that the Cowboys don't have to live and die by Dak Prescott's arm, which if they did, they could because Dak Prescott had a good game. There was some drops by receivers, but Dak Prescott played a very good game. I'll give it to him. So, how important is this offensive line for Dak Prescott, making sure that he can sustain the regular season and then if they do end up making a playoff run?
Well, it's paramount to his success. Dak having been out, I think, 8 games last year because of injury last year. The offensive line wasn't nearly as good as what it was or what it showed on the first game. So he's going to go as how successful they go throughout the rest of the year. The one thing that I noticed was Dak wasn't getting pushed off his spot very much tonight, right? He was able to set up, look downfield, make some very aggressive throws. You don't make those throws unless you know you can step into your pocket. And he was able to do that for a majority of the period tonight. I think they only had a couple of times where he got pressured, and that was because of the pressure that they were bringing. But one-on-one pass protection, I thought that was above standard tonight. Right? Again, I think there's some things they can clean up, but that looked good. How they were running the ball, I felt like they understood exactly what they were trying to do. They were getting to the second level. They were finishing blocks. Those are the things that's going to help Dak Prescott be the football player that we feel like that he can ultimately be.
Yeah, speaking of the quarterbacks, I did notice one of the big things that people criticize Jalen Hurts for is saying that he pretty much goes through one read, and if that read isn't there, then he kind of takes off scrambling. Kind of a quiet night for AJ Brown. He only got one target. It was at the end of the game. Maybe he wasn't available. I'm going to look for the all 22 to come out so that we can really dissect the game. But really
Yeah.
quiet night for AJ Brown, but he was able to utilize his other receivers. Jahan Dotson traded to the Eagles last year. Saquon Barkley also catching out of the backfield and making things happen there. He had his tight ends doing some work. But what did you think about Jalen Hurts' performance tonight? And do you agree that he holds on to the ball for too long and doesn't fully go through his progressions?
So I'm gonna challenge you a little bit on that because when you got the type of offensive line that they have, I'd hold on to the ball too. And the reason why I do it is because I got faith in all five of my guys. Now, when Landon Dickerson went out, that's a whole different story. But for the most part, he does it because he knows he has the time to be able to do it. And the other part of it too is this has always been Jalen Hurts' entire career. He's always been extremely careful with the football, right? And I always get a bit upset about when people say that he holds the ball too long because the thing is, again, going back to what I said before, when you got the type of offensive line that he has, of course, I'm going to hold the ball until I know a guy is open. Here's the other thing about it too. Jalen Hurts is also probably one of the most formidable runners in the NFL too. So he can pick and choose what he wants to do when he wants to do it.
Very, very true. I completely agree. I think when you have an offensive line like that Eagles offensive line, which promises to once again be one of the best offensive lines in football this year, you have the luxury of holding on to the ball for 3.2 seconds, unlike some other teams where you've only got 2 seconds. If you don't get the ball out, it's a sack fumble. Bad things happen. But I think he feels secure and for really good reason. I completely
No,
agree.
and that's absolutely right, Arabia. Here's the biggest thing is like they are the standard. They are the standard. And they're the standard because they set the tempo, they set the tone every time they come out. Running the football, sometimes Saquon Barkley wasn't getting touched. He was like 4 or 5 yards down the field. I watched him, knock off about 2 11-yard runs in a row, right? When you can do that, man, I'm telling you, like it changes how you call plays. It changes the mindset of how you want to finish out games. And then here's the one thing that people don't understand about the Eagles. They literally on first and second down only need to get 6 yards. Because after that, they can tush push for the next 2 plays and pick up 2-3 yards easily. So when you got that kind of arsenal up front, man, you're very, very tough to beat.
Yeah, and once again, yet another Tyler on an offensive line. Tyler Steen was in for the Eagles at guard. I think he did a pretty good job. There were some times where I do feel like he got beat, but again, that's okay. It's week one. I don't think it's any alarm. And you have Cam right there, and then you also have Landon Dickerson
Sure,
right there.
sure.
So either way, I think they did a really good job, and that's a good point. Once again, we saw the tush push today. Once again, unstoppable, 100% with the tush push yet again. I saw the Cowboys try a strategy of getting off the edge really fast and trying to pull Jalen Hurts' legs, which of course just didn't work out. So hopefully one of these teams get creative and try to figure out how to stop it because right now it's still very much unstoppable.
Listen, you can't stop 1,200 pounds coming at you, with a ferocity that they have, and they've mastered it, and it's just something that only they can do. The way they can do it. So they have something in their arsenal that nobody can stop.
So moving on to tonight's game, Chiefs Chargers is in Sao Paolo, Brazil, yet another division game. The Chiefs are 7-0 in the last 7 games versus the Chargers. Not only are the Chiefs 7-0 against the Chargers in their last 7 games, 4 of their last 6 games were decided within 3 points. So this game could be a lot closer than I think a lot of people are anticipating. Coach, what do you predict in this game as far as the trenches, or how do you think this game is going to play out?
Here's the biggest thing about, first games, and particularly when you play first games in a place like Brazil. Like, there's a lot to be said about the way the NFL is moving around the world right now. But even when you're in Brazil, whether you're in London, whether you're anywhere else, you have to make sure that your routine is always going to be your routine. So I always say the team that has the best ability to have a very similar routine to what they would normally do, and in this case, it's a road game for both teams, that's going to be the team that has the most success. Now, from a trench standpoint, the biggest and most important thing is, can we gel coming out in the first game and be successful? So, like, let's be honest. Who's going to handle being in Brazil the right way? Let's start there. Then after that, are they still going by their normal routine, meeting the same, working out the same, getting their bodies prepared the same way? The team that handles that is going to be the team that's going to be more successful. That being said, Patty Mahomes is going to be Patty Mahomes until Patty Mahomes is not Patty Mahomes. Like, you got to prove to us that you can be the type of team that takes his favorite things away from him. Now, what they've done up front is they've been able to strengthen his front 5 guys. That was always something, in my opinion, the last couple of years that he had to work around. They've made some improvements there, but we will need to see exactly how those improvements actually improve them as an offense.
Absolutely. And last year they had some real trouble at left tackle between injury and just really inconsistent play. So what they
Yeah.
did this offseason, they go out and they draft Josh Simmons, which I think he's a rookie, so you kind of don't always know which way that's going to go. That might put more pressure on Creed Humphrey and also on Trey Smith. But I think if and with Joe Thuney is also out. He's with the Bears now.
Yep.
So if Simmons doesn't step up, I think this might end up being one of the worst offensive lines that Patrick Mahomes has played behind. Not to say that it's going to be bad, but just compared to the offensive lines that Patrick Mahomes has played behind, this might not be the best one, which is going to make Patrick Mahomes have to be the force multiplier that he is, right? Like that's when Patrick Mahomes, the GOAT, the reason why he's on everyone's top list is going to have to make up the difference for this offensive line if things don't work out, kind of like they did last year.
No, absolutely. And here's the biggest thing is even as bad as they were last year, again, like you said, when you got a type of force multiplier back there that's calling the shots, and you've got an Andy Reid run offense that understands how to use his weapons, like you always have to be on your A game. Now, here's the sneaky thing about the Chargers. They've got a head coach too that totally understands this moment just as well. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they match up, how they approach this game, how they do from an offensive standpoint. If I'm the Chargers, I keep the ball out of Pat Mahomes' hands as much as possible by the way I run my offense. Look for them to do that because they've got an upgraded offensive line too. They've got a type of offense and they're not scared to run it down their throats as well. So it'll be very interesting to see again how their game plan, both the Chiefs and the Chargers, translates over in Brazil.
Absolutely. And just speaking of the trenches, as far as the defensive line for the Chargers, Joey Bosa isn't there anymore. He's over with the Bills. So we're just
Right.
going to see a few different adjustments for both of these teams in the trenches and see, just how it plays out. But ultimately, I think the AFC West is my favorite division to look out for this season with those head coaches. I mean, Sean Payton, Jim
Yeah.
Harbaugh, Andy Reid, and who else am I missing? Oh, Pete Carroll, of
Be
course.
careful.
Like this division is just stacked as far as head coaches. So, there might be some upsets in the AFC West and coaches being able to game plan around offenses and defenses and weaknesses and trying to figure out how to get their guys in the best position to be successful.
No, that's exactly true. When you have that much tenure, that much successful tenure, I'm almost positive that every head coach that you named has won a Super Bowl or has been in a Super Bowl, right? So Peyton Manning is not Peyton Manning.
Sean
So
Payton.
Sean Payton has won a Super Bowl. Andy Reid obviously has won a Super Bowl. Pete Carroll has obviously won a Super Bowl, right? Harbaugh has at least been in a Super Bowl. So
Right.
with that being said, you've got teams that understand how to get to the highest level possible, right? And it's a lot of talent in the AFC West too. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm excited. Listen, I'm just excited as you are.
Yeah, I can't wait. And of course, these two coaches are on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as consecutive tenure in the NFL, with Harbaugh coming back for his second year with the Chargers,
Yeah,
re-entering the NFL after taking a break and going with Michigan, and then Andy Reid, just from being with the Eagles. I think you were with under Andy Reid
I was.
for a year, weren't you?
Half a year. He cut me in training camp.
Okay, we won't hold it against him, I guess.
We won't. We won't. We won't.
Just a couple more kind of quick fire predictions. Let's do Falcons Bucs. What do we think about that game?
You know what? It's going to be very interesting because I think both teams have something to prove. I'm going to go with the Bucks. I'm going to tell you that right now. I think they're probably the most established. Even though now, here's the thing you got to understand. That's also a great rivalry as well. So it's one of those things where, again, it's game one. You're going against a team that right? You understand their weapons. Although Atlanta has a different quarterback, he's going to be something that they got to figure out. But again, first games, division rivals, man, I love these games because it brings more than just talent to the park. It brings an attitude because you want to have that one up on the team that you're going to see again later on in the season.
Yeah, and I think if it wasn't for injuries last year, the Bucs really would have made a run for top of that division. But
Agreed.
unfortunately, injuries and this year, like you said, they're going with Michael Penix, and they also have a new defensive coordinator. Jimmy Lake is out, so we're going to see the new and improved Falcons to see just how much this offense and defense can benefit from some offseason moves. Another prediction for next for this Sunday: Panthers Jags. Now I know these aren't the most exciting teams on the map right now. People are looking at the Vikings Bears, people are looking at the Bills Ravens. But let's talk a little bit about the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, who I think a lot of people are starting to give up on. It seems like he's kind of getting towards the edge of his rope. And then also with the Panthers with Bryce Young over there to see what Dave Canales is doing. What do we think about the Jags and the Panthers?
Lackluster from the standpoint of it being star power, but also a very sneaky game it could be. Now, when I look at the Jaguars roster, I see more players that most people know, right? But when you look at the Panthers rosters, other than the quarterback, Jimmy Horn, who played for us here at Colorado, they've got some decent players, but I still don't think that they have enough to be able to be formidable coming out in the first game like this. Trevor Lawrence has a lot to prove. They have improved the offensive line somewhat, but they're still trying to figure out who they are from an identity standpoint. So what I'm thinking we're going to see Arabia is this. We're going to see two teams playing in the first game, unlike the Chiefs and the Chargers who know who they are, right? Unlike the Cowboys and the Eagles who know who they are, right? They understand they have a legacy of being specific types of teams. You're talking about two teams trying to figure out, is this the quarterback? Is this the offensive line? Do we have enough skilled players? And how are we going to use and how are we going to try to abuse Travis Hunter? Those are things that they're trying to figure out. So it's going to be one of those games you got to kind of sit back and look. It could probably end up being one of those ugly 6-3 games. Who knows? But we're going to watch it anyway because we love football.
Absolutely. And I also saw, as far as the depth chart for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they do have Travis Hunter as starting wide receiver, but a backup cornerback. So do you think there's a possibility that we will see a Jimmy Horn, Travis Hunter matchup?
No question about it. No question about it. See, the thing you got to understand about the NFL, the NFL is still about entertainment. It's still about entertainment, but not even just with that. You're talking about two players that deserve to be out on the football field, right? I had the fortune of being able to coach both of them last year and be around them and see how they play. That's going to be an interesting matchup to see. Now, who's going to win? I'm just going to watch it and just however it turns out, it turns out. But you do have two very talented players that's going to two different situations. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle it.
All right. So now we are going to our Q&A section. I had some fans throw in some questions for us to read out live on the podcast.
Okay.
And we can just kind of blow through these quickly. First, we have, oh man, Black Man. Thank you so much, Black Man. Will you invite Michael Irvin to your show? What do we think? Do you think we would invite Michael Irvin to our show?
The playmaker?
Playmaker.
See, hey, I'm gonna be honest. There's not very many players that you can mention that I don't have some sort of connection with. But my connection with Mike is so extensive. You don't understand. I will always love Michael Irvin. His level of intensity, enthusiasm, and blind faith in the Dallas Cowboys is like no other. And I'm telling you, most people feel like sometimes it's an act, but it's not. Like, that is Mike 100% of the time. So should we invite him? You're doing right, Black Man. We should invite that Black Man.
I completely agree. I had the pleasure of being on It Is What It Is with Michael Irvin last season. And when I say we had a good, healthy back and forth Cowboys Commanders debate, but it was so fun. The energy was just so high and so in point. And even though we disagreed, we both agreed, like, these debates that we have with each other are really fun at the end of the day, even though we disagree. So I would definitely have Michael Irvin on. I'll take both of y'all on at the same time. I'm not scared of y'all.
Let's do it. Now, I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to let you have your little Commanders, whatever it is you want to do. I'm going to let you do that. But when it comes down to it, When it comes down to it, you know where I stand. That's
That's
all I'm
fine.
saying.
And stay over there because I'm gonna be where I'm at. Question: were you at the White House?
Whoa, whoa, whoa. I thought this was a football friendly show. What are we
I'm just
doing?
asking important questions. I gotta ask the hard
But
hitting
see,
questions.
here's the thing I can do. Here's the thing I can do. I can still plead the fifth 30 years later. So that's what I'm doing, pleading the fifth.
All right, Coach George, please the fifth, but I know what that means. You was in that house. All right, so now we have Mr. D. Gilbert 88. His question is: surprise team this NFL season? I just realized I didn't give you my picks when we did the picks. Okay,
You
so
didn't.
Chiefs Chargers. Who do you have for Chiefs Chargers?
Chiefs.
Okay, I'm gonna go Chargers just to be different.
Okay.
Just to be different, I'm gonna go Chargers. And then we did Bucs Falcons. I have the Bucs for sure. We agree on that.
We agree on that.
You also played for the Buccaneers for a year. Is that
Correct.
correct?
2 years.
Okay.
2
2
years
years.
with the Bucs.
2 years.
Yep.
Okay. And then Panthers Jags, I'm gonna go Jaguars. So we agree on everything except I'm gonna just go Chargers. I'm gonna go primetime upset, week 1, weird stuff, perfect
Brazil.
opportunity. Brazil. Yeah,
You
I'm gonna go
know.
Chargers. Yeah. Okay, so my surprise team this NFL season, I'm gonna say the Raiders, only because once
Okay.
again I have my eyes on the AFC West. Do I think that they're gonna be this deep playoff run team? Not necessarily, but I do think they're gonna do better than they did last year and better than people are projecting them to do.
Okay.
With Pete Carroll at the helm, I think he'll have the guys ready. Ashton Genty, I think by the middle of the season, we'll start to really pick up steam. Geno Smith should be an upgrade to that offense, better than Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew were last year. So I think they have the pieces in place to be a solid team, surprise team as far as better than people are projecting them to be. Who's your surprise team?
You know what? And I know this is going to make me sound like a homer, but I didn't necessarily go into tonight before the game started thinking this, but the Cowboys are a pretty good football team. Like what I saw tonight is something that if I'm a real fan who understands football, I can look at that game and say, you know what? That's a team that nobody had any expectations about that came in and lost to the Super Bowl champions by 4 points. Now, let's dive a little deeper into it. Why did they lose by 4 points? Well, fumble leading into the end zone, right? Well, the Cowboys get that touchdown, then they're up 27, 20, 24, whatever. Now it's about holding the lead, right? They had a couple of opportunities at the end. CeeDee Lamb dropped some footballs. That's not something that he does, right? He'll turn that around. When I look at stuff like that, and here's the other thing, I'm going to say it again. Kenny Clark is a dominant football player. He always has been. I wanted to see, did the Green Bay Packers just give up on him because he lost a step? Or did they say, listen, if this is what they need for us to get Micah Parsons, then this is what we're going to do. We love you, Kenny, but you got to go. That's what they did. It's business. So when you talk about a surprise football team, I'm very encouraged about what I saw with the Dallas Cowboys. Here's what that means to me. They are going to put themselves in position to be able to make a playoff run as long as they stay healthy.
I agree with you up until that last point. I
Ooh.
think the
See,
Cowboys.
that's that commanders thing in the back of your head that just won't let you do it.
It's in the front of my head now. It's NFL season, baby. I brought it to the forefront. But I think the Cowboys are perennial regular season contenders. And then when it comes to the playoffs, I have to see it to believe it. I think what I saw today is a really good indication that this year could be the year that they get some playoff wins and stack some wins in the postseason. I did not expect to see this Cowboys team. And I think as much slack as I've given Dallas for this Schottenheimer hire, he might actually have something going. And so,
Yo,
I was a little skeptical about little Marty, about little Shoddy, but
not little Marty.
yeah, little Marty, but he came out tonight and showed poise. He came out tonight and showed both on offense and defense again against the Super Bowl winning Philadelphia Eagles,
Sure.
who have been a dominant team that they can hold their own. And I think this game should have really put the entire NFC East on notice, Commanders, Giants, that as much as we saw the Cowboys last year be who they were, that is not the 2025 Cowboys. So I think that's a really good pick for sure.
And one last point I want to make, and this is just a bit of insider information. Man, the players love that dude. Like that's the thing is like when I listen to the players talk about Coach Schottenheimer, they don't talk about him as if he was just a secondary pick. They talk about him like he came in and changed the culture of the locker room. And I feel like that's how they played. They played like they had a rejuvenation about them and they like who they listen. As a player, you want to be able to say, you know what? I play for that guy because I know that guy's got my back. And that's what it seems like. So you know what? Let's lock in and let's see what it look like. But we're
Yeah,
gonna
let's see
beat
what it
y'all.
looks like.
We're gonna definitely beat y'all.
I
That's
think
for
you'll beat us
sure.
once. We're gonna end up splitting this year. Mark my words.
All
Y'all not
right.
gonna sweep us.
All right. Beat y'all at your house too. But
All right, we have. Do you think the spreads of the game determine how referees call games? And that's by Big Stony Baker. I'll say this. I don't put anything past large organizations. Do I think there are specific refs who I can point out that are doing nefarious things behind the scenes? I won't say that, no. But as much as I've seen things happen with the NFLPA this offseason, things in the NBA with referees and betting,
sure,
I think anytime that there are billions of dollars on the line, there are opportunities for some bad apples, because I don't think it's everyone. I think there are
sure,
opportunities for
sure.
bad apples to spoil it and do shady things in the background. So, could there be some nefarious things with refs and umpires and line judges and all that? Yes, I think there could be. But can I point to anyone specific? No. What are your thoughts, Coach George?
Listen, as someone that's been on the inside of it, like I've never seen or been a part of anything like that. Now I can't tell you that it doesn't happen, but at the same time, I don't think that there is some sort of private meeting that they're having and saying, hey, the spread is 8.5, or whatever it is. Let's make sure we call this one, 8.5 tight, or whatever. I don't think that's going on. And here's the deal. Listen, there are plenty of people in the world that are smarter than me, right? It could be, but if it is, there's so much that has to go into that for that to work out the right way. I just don't see it being something that players would be involved in, that coaches would be involved in. And like you said, when you got this much information, you got this many people looking into a situation like most people already are, especially with the NFL and what's happening this past off season. I just don't see that being a thing.
Yeah, I don't either. And that same thought was put on this new technology with placing the ball and this measurement system, and people being like, well, with more technology involved, there's hacking and there's people who can go in remotely and alter things. And I understand that that is a concern because hacking and digital security is a concern in 2025. But at the same time, I think it does advance the game. So I think there's a fine line between wanting to trust the game and understand that this is something that everyone has their eye on. So how much could you really get away with? But then understanding that people have gotten away with a lot more dealing with a lot less. So,
Sure.
I think it's a fair question, at least. I think it's an important question to at least ask in order to keep the NFL honest. Let's see what else we have. Besides Jaden Daniels, who do you feel has a shot at being team MVP? I'm going to say Frankie Louvu. This is by Aaron Morton _re_10. Besides Jaden Daniels on the Commanders, Frankie Louvu is a really, really great pick. He was one of the keys of the defense last year. He was really great. Bobby Wagner also right next to him, of a key veteran, especially in the run game. I think you probably got him. I would say Frankie Louvu coming back and being consistent in year 2 with the Commanders coming from the Panthers. What do you think, Coach George?
So
Praise the Commander.
you know what? Listen, I'm gonna go with my homeboy. I'm gonna go with Terry. Like, listen, I just don't think when I think about most teams, right? And we just got finished talking about Michael Irvin. When you start talking about like the heart and soul of teams, like always go with the guys that the other guys say we gotta have, right? And Terry's one of those guys that you guys have to have, in my opinion. You have to have him because he makes key plays, he's consistent, and he's one of those type of guys that's gonna come and show up with his lunch pail every single day. He has just as good of an opportunity as being, you guys MVP as anybody else. So I'm going with Terry.
Here's the only reason, 2 reasons why I didn't say Terry. Number one, I think a lot of times when a receiver does well, if you also have a really good quarterback, sometimes that focus can shift on the quarterback.
I'll give you that.
So I think a lot of Terry's success, some people would just shift on Jaden Daniels. And I think it's symbiotic. I think it's really both of them. So, and I also think if you have a defense like the Commanders who isn't expected to perform well, but you have a really bright spot on a defense that wasn't expected to do super well, you kind of look at that person like, wow, because your expectation for them was so low. If they overperform, you're like, wow, that person did so great. So I think people are already expecting great things from this offense. I don't think that's the question. I think everyone expects Terry to have another 1,000-yard season, for him to be a locker room guy and be successful, but no one's really expecting too much from this defense, particularly in the secondary. So I think that's why maybe it would be a defensive player, because the expectation is low. So anything that they do over that is just going to be praised and magnified times 1,000.
Listen, I'm a default to you because you are definitely, a rider for your Commanders. I'm just answering the question because it's part of the segment. I'm tired of talking.
Oh, please. Okay. Jay Witchard. Falcons beat the Bucs twice last year and led the division before Kirko got hurt. Why still no love? Jay Witchard, I'm not sure what you mean by why still no love, but I will give the Falcons their flowers. I think a lot of people down Kirk Cousins because he does pretty decent in the playoffs, but hasn't won I'm sorry, in the regular season, but hasn't won a playoff game,
Right.
but is getting all this money. And I think people are really caught up on the guaranteed money of his contracts, but not that same performance on the field. But I'll give the Falcons their flowers. They had some really good pieces, I think, on offense and defense that weren't necessarily maximized, especially under Jimmy Lake, but that's no longer a problem. Hopefully this season they come out bigger and better and give the Bucs a run for their money for the NFC South.
See, okay, let me point out something. Man, this is where business and football are two entirely different things, right? Don't get mad at Kurt and his people because they know how to wheel and deal, right? They just look. I mean, his team did what they needed to do for him, right? The other thing is too, you got to think about when Kurt was a commander, right? He did everything he was supposed to do, as a player while he was there, which got him the contracts that he got, right? The other thing is very reliable. The problem is as soon as you attach the amount of money, the guaranteed money to someone's reliability or unreliability, all of a sudden it becomes, well, is he worth it? But I can tell you there are more than half the teams in the NFL that wish they had a Kirk Cousins. Now, in terms of why no love, I'm not saying there's no love. I said this at the beginning. When you play in a divisional rival, anything is possible. Anything is possible. And those games, when I was playing with the Bucs, playing Atlanta, playing New Orleans, playing Minnesota, those types of teams, man, anything could happen, and it did. So I don't see this being any different.
Completely agree. And last one, I think this is amazing question. Let's talk law enforcement. Said, why the hell is Dallas on primetime again? Nobody wants to see them. LOL. Let me say this before you go.
Okay. All right. Okay.
As much as I rag on Dallas and give you a hard time and Michael Irvin a hard time and any Cowboys fan that I can get my hands on a hard time, in some regard, they are America's team. And they are America's team because a lot of America loves them. They're one of those teams where you have Dallas fans in Seattle, and Boston, and Minnesota, and Hawaii, and Florida, and Germany. They're one of the most recognizable sports teams in the world. Not just NFL teams, not just American teams. That logo, the history of the team is historic, and the franchise has built itself to be just iconic. And I will never say that again. I'm not even sure that will even make the show.
You know what? I'm so sorry. Something happened on my end.
No.
It went out. Can you say it again? No. Just say it one more time and I'll leave you alone.
No, absolutely not. And so moving right along, I think in that regard, there's a reason why Dallas will get primetime games season after season, regardless of what their performance was the previous season. It's because people want to see them, good or bad. People get talking about the Cowboys. They either love them or they hate them. And that kind of polarizing figure will always draw ratings. And so that's why they're always prime time.
Well, okay. You know what? Everything you said is right. Right. But I want to make sure that I confirm some things that you said. So let's rewind all the way back to 1996 when we won the Super Bowl. So I'm gonna give
Wasn't that 95? I think that was 1995.
Well, it was 96. The Super Bowl was played in 96.
For the 95
season. 95 season, but it was a 96 Super Bowl. So we win the Super Bowl. I'm gonna say it again. We win the Super Bowl. We're flying back from the Super Bowl. I see my coach walking back to me and he's staring at me. And I'm like, we just won a Super Bowl. Why is he looking at me like this? He was coming back to tell me that the Cowboys were allocating me to go play for the Frankfurt Galaxy in World League Football. So I get mad because I'm like, man, I'm going to miss all the parties because I got to go to Atlanta and train to go and play in the freaking World League. I was hot. I was livid, right? So fast forward. I get over to Germany. We're playing the first week we were there. Show up at the hotel, and there are hundreds of people with Dallas Cowboy jerseys on. Why? Because unknown George Hegamin, who played for the Dallas Cowboys, was showing up as now part of the Frankfurt Galaxy team over there. My mind was completely blown. So now, let me fast forward. In Germany, when you play World League Football, you play in all these different countries. London, Germany, Dusseldorf, Frankfurt, Amsterdam, Scotland, all these different places. And there were Cowboy fans everywhere that I went. That told me something extremely different about what the Cowboys were compared to what the rest of the NFL teams were. So it's not just America's team, it's a global icon. So with that being said, I know this is making you sick, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Love us or hate us, I guarantee you when you look at the ratings tonight, everybody logged on to that joint Arabia. Everybody did. You know it. But now, if it was the Commanders and the Eagles, people on the Eastern Seaboard would have been there. But like, you're not having everybody in the world sign up. You know why? I ain't got that star inside your helmet.
You know what? This is where I offer some pushback because I think up until the last couple decades, the Commanders the Redskins were actually also a global.
No.
Yes, they were. No. There were lots of Redskins fans over in England.
I was over in Germany. I was over in Scotland. I was over in Italy. I ain't see no Commanders or Redskins, nothing.
You know what it is? It's physics. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to do the science for you. One of Newton's laws of physics is every action has an equal or opposite reaction.
See, this is when you know you're really stretching and reaching. When you go to Newton, you're trying to pull Newton in on this?
Every action has an equal or opposite reaction, meaning if there are Cowboys fans all over the world, what's the opposite reaction to Cowboys fans? Redskins fans. There have been Washington fans all over the world because people like to be different and people who like to be just people who like to be different. So
look, this is what I know. People are allowed their opinions, and I'm gonna let you have yours. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Well, that's all the time that we have for tonight. Remember to check out the Chiefs-Chargers game in Sao Paolo, Brazil tonight on Friday. And also remember to send in your questions or your comments to All 32 NFL. We will read them on our segments, on our episodes, and let you know when you have been featured. That's all the time that we have. Thanks again so much, Coach George, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.